Hello, everyone, and welcome to the World-Herald Prep Zone podcast. I'm Sam McKewon. I'm here with Stu Pospisil and Mike Patterson. Hello. You're getting this on audio, and hey, we're back for a Prep Zone podcast. We haven't had one in a while. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Hanging in.
That's good.
Doing good, Sam. Thanks.
That's good. What we're going to talk about are just a couple of things. First, the basketball season is in full swing. The Metro Conference tournament begins early next week, then has a moratorium. Then it comes up again, so we're going to preview both the boys and the girls Metro Conferences. You guys had preseason rankings. We'll kind of talk a little bit about whether those have held up early on or if there's been any early surprises, early disappointments, and maybe at the end if we get to just a comment on All-State football, because I know that's one of the best teams I've ever seen assembled, Stu, but simultaneously there was a big question at quarterback, and that's been kind of a conversation. But we'll start with this. Basketball. High school basketball is in gear. The Metro Conference tournament for the boys and the girls starts early next week. We will start with the girls' side. Mike, first, have there been anything from the early season rankings or changes that you've been impressed by, teams that have jumped out at you, players that have jumped out at you that was different than what you thought before the year?
Well, I'd say at the start of the season, Sam, it looked like there were three teams that really looked like they were maybe a cut above everybody else. Millard South, Omaha Central, and Fremont. Have there been any changes? I would say one thing is that Fremont's been beaten already by Lincoln Pius X, so that's a little bit of a surprise, at least in my mind, even though Pius is the defending champion.
They lost a pretty good player to
Nebraska. Right.
Yeah.
I hear she's playing at Nebraska.
Yeah.
Talking about Alexis Markowski, of course. But, Pius obviously showed that they have a little bit more firepower than I probably gave them credit for it originally. And, probably another team that I would put right up there would be Bellevue West, who I saw them play Pius just this past weekend. And Bellevue West defeated Pius. And, Bellevue West almost beat Millard South about a week before that. So I'd probably put the Thunderbirds right up there too. But, it's been kind of an interesting season already. It seems like there's kind of a big division between some of the haves and some of the have-nots when you look at some of these scores that, there's about a 30 or 40 or 50-point differential. You don't really like to see that, but that's kind of the way it goes sometimes. But, I would say those five teams. I might throw Bellevue East in there too. They've got a pretty good team. Millard South plays there this weekend, so that'll be a good game. But just kind of off the top of my head, I'd say that handful of teams looks like they're at the top of Class A right now.
We'll get to the Metro Conference tournament in a minute. Stu, the same question to you about boys basketball. Has that kind of, fell out the way you expected? I know one of the high-profile teams in the state Grand Island has had some losses early in the season that may have been surprising.
I don't know if necessarily. I think the surprising loss for GI was losing by 25 to Elkhorn South.
Right.
And again, I apologized immediately for an early bulletin I had on the Grand Island game with a St. Louis team, Vashon. Mm-hmm. I apologized for that, and I do again. But I won't apologize that they have to find a second scoring option for Isaiah Trout, or it's going to be a long season for the Islanders.
Yeah.
You just can't. All the great players recently have had other teammates able to score. And
a wingman.
And especially for a guy who has to stay inside part of the time. For GI to get to the state tourney, they got to have some guys step up. And they've had some, you're coming off football, so you got to get some legs changed underneath. But we'll see. It was a Kite and Fife, maybe. Is it the Olsen kid with his threes, maybe? We'll just have to see. Other than that, I would say Lincoln Southwest might be a surprise.
Right.
You saw them the other night. You were kind of impressed with them.
Anytime you beat Omaha South by 20 is pretty good.
Well, South is
South's
young.
not a great team, but
we're going to see a little bit more. They play Southeast on Friday night, and Southeast just got beat pretty good by Westside. So they're 3-2 against the Southwest undefeated record. Other than that, I think it's been chalk in Class A so far. Westside didn't show up very well against Millard North in a game in Columbus opening weekend, but the Warriors are still going to be there. Bellevue West has a interesting weekend ahead before the Metro tourney. They go to Sioux Falls to the Sanford Pentagon Saturday. And they play now Corona Centennial from California, which has at least 3 Division I's. During the week this week, they shifted their opponent up there. It was supposed to be Chicago Simeon, which is good in its own right. It's 36 in the national rankings. Now Bellevue West gets number 6, and they're number 46. Bellevue West is. Then they go to Kansas City, playing the old Kemper on Monday. Now the Hy-Vee Arena against Helios from Jefferson City. Helios is 0-4. So, but Bellevue West had struggles the other night against an Elkhorn South team that is close, but they got to find a way to get over the top. Losses by 2, 2, and 3 points. So they're close. They've played Central tough, played Lincoln East tough opening night, played Bellevue West to the end, but they're a team you may not want to see in February for sure, but they have to learn how to win. We got a team in Lincoln football-wise that knows what that's like.
Yeah. They do. They haven't known it for about 5 years, which is I'm sure Elkhorn South wants to be.
Doesn't want to be known as that.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so let's get into the Metro tournament. Now the structure of this is there's playing games on Monday. Is that right?
Right.
And then there's like a whole slate of games on Tuesday, and then it goes whoop,
But at home sites.
at home sites, and then they play at Ralston, or do they
play at Baxter Arena
Baxter
starting the 28th of the quarterfinals, 29th are the semis. They have to take the 30th off because UNO scheduled a women's game that day, and then the finals are the 31st. So for those teams in the finals, that's probably not a bad schedule.
Yeah.
Play 2, get 1 off, play the final, and the finals are, I think, 3:30 and 5:15 on New Year's Eve.
And of course, the big thing at Baxter Arena this year, Sam, is we're going to have a shot clock. So that'll be fun to see. I know a lot of coaches.
Well, that's going to mean a lot of more missed shots.
A lot of fans have talked about that. Some of these teams it's not going to affect, but some it definitely is, as far as they like to hold the ball, they like to slow it down, or they're not going to be able to do that now. So.
Well, it's going to be a huge experiment. It may dictate what happens with, do we get the shot clock in Class A? Do we get an A only? Does B fall in line? Again, if you take a look, if you chop the 35-second clock down, if you milk it to the full 35, you're still only gaining 8 possessions a quarter.
Right.
It comes down to how well you shoot and what your pace is. It's not necessarily going to lead to better scoring, and I think that's what people are thinking. And if you hold the ball, you've done it at your own risk. We know some teams that have lost state championships because they held the ball.
Right. Well, I think it'll just lead to more missed shots. I don't know that it'll greet more points. What I will say is it will prevent teams from holding the ball for 3.5 minutes and playing for one shot and
that's what I don't like
playing
is
4 corners.
I think we should go to 18-minute halves and eliminate the quarter break because then you eliminate 2 sets of holding for the last shot.
I get that. That
and
makes
they
sense.
do that in Minnesota. They're on the half system up there.
Maybe they should.
Well, it's interesting because the ADs and the coaches had talked about the shot clock in the past, even last year, but the NSAA was not on board with it. The NSAA is on board with it this year.
Well, that's because the National Federation is on board with
Right,
it. They're not
right.
going to. South Dakota, for instance, has done the shot clock. They didn't have a voice on the National Rules Committee as a result. So it's kind of do you do something and lose a chance to influence other, votes at the table?
So they'll have the shot clocks only at Baxter, or they're going to have them in the high school?
No,
Just at Baxter.
just at Baxter. And they're going to
That's
have
great.
they're going to have school personnel, not UNO personnel,
Sure.
do it so that they can learn and also see what complications there could be. Because let's be honest, it's tough getting people either to volunteer or be paid to do these clocks, the score clocks and scoreboards right now. Now you're adding another person where that the judgment is going to be even worse as far as criticalness. You've got to be right on, and you've got 3 sets. You've got officials, 3-man crews, 3-person crews. They're going to have to watch something different too. So there's a lot of working parts. The Metro Tourney is going to be a great exposure, either positive or negative.
Yeah,
Well, what's going to be interesting is, like you said, the school people are going to be running those shot clocks. And we went to a Creighton game a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if they had someone else doing the shot clock that day, but there were about 3 times in the first half where the refs were, reset the clock or whatever, and it's like these are veteran people and at the college level. So at the high school level, it's really going to be...
But at least it gets reset to 35 seconds and not 20.
Yeah.
It's one less I got to think moment.
Right.
So
That's a good point.
We'll see. We'll be analyzing it very closely.
And it may be different for boys and girls. It very well may. I mean, that's entirely possible. It could be that the boys rush shots more, and because they see the clock and they're thinking they got to get something done in the first 10 seconds of the clock. Because in college, they kind of think that way. Okay, let's break down the bracket. On the girls' side, you have the two play-in games. Obviously, those teams are not favored to necessarily to win. Who are the 3 or 4 favorites, and who are the players to watch?
Got to start with top seed, Millard South. I've got them ranked number 1. They have pretty much everybody back from last year. They won the tournament last year. Bryce Myers has a lot of the same players that he's had, and now they're another year older. I haven't seen them play yet. They've been playing mostly teams that they should have beaten handily, and they have beaten them handily. So the Patriots are the logical selection going into the tournament. Their first game's at 5:30 on December 21st. They'll play the winner of that play-in game between South and North. One team I have seen, the second seed, Omaha Central. They were the runner-up last year. They had a big lead in the final against Millard South, and it kind of melted away. I think Central's inexperience showed a little bit. They hadn't been in that position before, but the Eagles are looking really good already. They'll be playing at 1 p.m. on December 21st. They'll be playing the winner of the Burke-Bryan play-in game. So I put the Eagles right there along with the Patriots. Third seed is Bellevue West. We talked about them a little bit. Taryn Wharton, their very fine guard, hit a couple of big three-pointers in the win over Pius X, which snapped the Thunderbolts' 34-game win streak. So Bellevue West is third seed, and I think, I mentioned Wharton. She had surgery on her Achilles heel, I think back in April, and they didn't know if she was even going to be able to play a whole lot this season, and she's back already. So she really worked hard to get back. So she's one of their key players, and they need her. They'll open up against Omaha Northwest. That'll be 5:30 on the 21st. And the fourth seed, Gretna, with their longtime coach, Jerome Scudler, who's, I think he's closing in on 600 wins, so he's done a great job there with the Dragons. They'll be playing Elkhorn South. That game's at 5:30 on the 21st, and I saw Elkhorn South. They got beat by Central the other night. They had a player go off for 25 points, but still it wasn't enough to beat the Eagles on their home court, so... those are the top 4 seeds, Sam. I'd probably throw Bellevue East, number 5 seed, in there. They're also a very, very good team this year. They'll open up against Papio South, but those are going to be some of the top teams, and like you said, those games will be on the 21st.
Stu, boys' side?
Well, number 1, Bellevue West, last year's runner-up. Josiah Dotzler, William Kyle. They play the Burke-Bellevue East winner at home, 7:15 on the 21st. Miller North, Jason Green, David Harmon. Number 2 seed play the Bryan Northwest winner, 6:45 on Tuesday. Number 3 West Side, Chandler Meeks, Reggie Thomas et al. Lost to Miller North, as we alluded to. Plays Benson, 7:15 at home. Number 4 Creighton Prep with UNO recruit Luke Jungers. Number 13 seed Millard West is their home opponent on Tuesday at 6. And number 5 Omaha Central with Jaden Dawson going to Loyola. Plays Papio South, which they've seen. It was a great first-round matchup last year. Back at Central, 6:30 on Tuesday.
That should be fun. It's the teams on the boys' side are the same, some of the same top teams as they had last year. They're just not quite as good, right? Like,
well, the whole level's down. I mean,
right.
After we've
Chucky
had
Hepburn's not there, Hunter Salson.
Yeah, after we had a season like last year.
Yeah.
I have to guard against being too disappointed in the level of play,
right?
Because you have to readjust your mindset,
right?
And we're not going to see that level in the foreseeable future, and it may be another 10 or 20 years before we do. Just historical trends.
That's right. Yeah, Jackie Hepburn's having a great season at Wisconsin. Okay, that's the basketball breakdown. I do want to ask you just one question about All-State football, All-Nebraska football. It was a great team. I mean, it really is. It's a team that could beat a lot of other all-star teams in the Midwest. I won't say Florida or Texas, but it could beat a lot of teams. There was obviously a question at quarterback. I happen to agree with the decision you made, but you picked Zane Flores of Gretna over Noah Walters at Lincoln East. Why did you do that? And what was the thinking behind making that decision? Because a lot of people thought Walters was the best. He was Gatorade Player of the Year. That said, go ahead.
Well, it was a close race, voting-wise, between Flores, Walters, and Gage Stinger. Now, Stinger played some defense, so that's where he went. That's maybe where he plays at Nebraska.
Right.
And I've done that before. Remember Omaha Burke whined that Xavier Watts was an offense? Guess what he's playing at Notre Dame?
He's playing
defense.
That's right.
So,
yeah, I get it. Yeah.
You know, receivers and quarterback this year were really difficult. There were so many good ones, and that's where that's where the talent's going on offense, as we see more passing offenses. Flores took him to the state title. He looked great in the final. He threw for 2,800 yards, almost 2,900 yards, and I don't divulge voting, but there were certain factors there that led me that he was just a tad bit better than Walters. And again, Walters, he had great yardage, great numbers, record numbers.
Yeah.
But you also have to look at competition too.
Things have changed, and I don't. And you've written already about this in the classes. I'm concerned that the quality of teams in Lincoln is going to be even more watered down now that you add two more high schools. Lincoln East was I think the best team of that group. I know Southeast was also in the state tournament and the state playoffs, but they played a lot of teams that are just not maybe as good as some of the competition Gretna played. Nevertheless, he had a great season. In a lot of other years, he might have been the All-State guy. But Flores is really, really good.
Yeah, he's been in contention 2 years, and he's still trying to decide on his college. Because
Nebraska would love him to walk on, but I don't think he's going to do that.
Right. Well, Nebraska only had 4 walk-ons yesterday.
I know. They would love to have him and that role, and maybe the new OC can watch him and have a different opinion. Maybe he's a scholarship guy, but they'd love to have him. I just don't think that. I think he's got better opportunities than a walk on at Nebraska.
Well, and with receiver, I mean, you had people like Cooper Erickson at Lincoln East and Grant Guyette at Westside. Joel Roll from Gretna stood out big time in the state final. And I went with 2 tight ends that are going to be major college guys, and Caden Helms from Bellevue West going to Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah.
Ben Bramer, Nebraska commit already as a junior, and Mike O'Reilly from Bellevue West going to Auburn. I mean, it's rare when I take 2 tight ends. Sometimes I don't take a tight end at all. But, again, these are kind of hybrid tight ends. They're long, great hands, and they can block.
Yeah,
and especially at Pierce, where Ben's dad, Mark Bramer, has been a lot run first quite a bit, unless he has good receivers, and he's turned out some tight ends. Matt Harrion comes to mind. Ben could be as good as Matt.
Yeah, I think putting Ben on the first team was that was a great call. He's going to, Nebraska loves him. So, all right, well, that's all we have for the Prep Zone podcast this week. We're going to be back in a couple more weeks to recap not only the Metro Conference, but just sort of have a reset on the rankings and maybe talk about a bunch of other stuff too. So for Stu and Mike, I'm Sam. Thanks for listening.